Well, hello and welcome to the next installment in my explaining every arc of Katekyo Hitman Reborn series. This time I'll be explaining the Varia arc, the one where we get some actual Mafia-like elements introduced to the story. So let's not waste any more time and get right to it. God knows we waited too long already.
Oh brother, this guy stinks!
And of course, spoilers ahead. We start the arc with two people fighting at night atop some buildings. One is a swordsman with long white hair and the other a boy with a boomerang and dying wind flames on his forehead. But unlike Tsuna's, his are blue in color. The swordsman gains the upper hand in the fight and asks the boy why he came to Japan while he hangs from a building. He doesn't answer and he catches something that falls out of his pocket, which is revealed to be a picture of Tsuna and his mom. We flash forward to next morning to when Tsuna wakes up and finds his mom cooking up a storm in their kitchen. He asks her what the occasion is and she says his father is coming back after 2 years. Tsuna is surprised and asks if he was found, because he thought his father disappeared. But his mom explains he asked her to tell Tsuna he became one with the stars, because it sounded romantic. Gee, and I thought my parents were weird. Tsuna explains the situation to Yamamoto and Gokudera on their way to school, and they are excited to meet his dad, especially Gokudera, as he is Tsuna's right-hand man. But Tsuna is feeling conflicted about the whole thing, as he's never really got along with his dad because of his absence. So Yamamoto comes up with the idea that they skip school and hang out to distract Tsuna from the whole thing. Of course they bring the whole gang with them, including Kyoko, Haru, Ipin and Rambo, and they have a grand old time. While they take a break, Tsuna talks with Kyoko a bit and they share a sweet moment together. But then the plot kicks in and they are interrupted when the two people from the beginning bring the fight to where they are. And the boy, who is named Baesung by the way, lands directly on Tsuna. He recognizes him and apologizes for being followed before running from the scene with him. They are intercepted by the swordsman who doesn't realize who Tsuna is. He threatens to extract information from Tsuna after finishing Baesung, but Yamamoto and Gokudera confront him and are easily dispatched, which prompts Baesung to engage the swordsman again, at which point Reborn returns after evacuating the non-combatants and bringing Tsuna the gloves so he can fight. Tsuna also enters Dying Will mode and starts fighting, but is no match for the swordsman, who upon seeing Tsuna's Dying Will flames, realizes who he is. He is saved by Baesung and he gives Tsuna a box with 7 rings inside he was entrusted with by his master. He doesn't have time to explain the whole situation, but he says Reborn knows what they are, but he can't fight against this enemy. Right then the swordsman finds them and is about to finish them off when Dino comes to the rescue. He obviously knows who the swordsman is, since he called him by his name, Squalo. After Dino's arrival, Squalo retreats but not before taking the rings from Tsuna. They go and check on Gokudera and Yamamoto, who are still raring to go, but Reborn tells them to go home since they are no match for this enemy, which leaves them visibly frustrated. Baesung is then taken to Dino's hospital, where Dino and Reborn explain the situation to Tsuna, saying Baesung is a member of Wongonga's External Advisors Organization, CEDEF, which are an organization independent of Wongonga but work alongside them, and Squalo is a member of the Wongonga's elite assassination squad, Varia, and the rings he took are called half Wongonga rings, which are one of Wongonga's greatest heirlooms, over which countless blood was spilled, so Tsuna was relieved that Squalo took such scary rings. But Dino says they are right here, showing him a box exactly like the one Squalo took, and explained those were fake and Baesung's boss gave them to him to serve as bait, while giving the real ones to Dino. He was about to hand them over to Tsuna, but he runs away saying he has to study. He arrives home where he sees that his father has returned and finds him passed out drunk with Kyoko and Haru and the kids, who are relieved that Tsuna is alright, and tell him his father told them some interesting and moving stories while he was away. He goes to bed feeling embarrassed that Kyoko saw his dad like that, and we see Reborn observing Iemitsu, that's Tsuna's dad's name by the way, and he says the situation over there must be real bad if he sent the half Wongonga rings to Tsuna. Next day Iemitsu is trying to have a father-son talk with Tsuna, but he wants none of that, and when he notices the Wongonga ring hanging from his neck, he goes to Reborn to ask him why he put it on him. Reborn says he didn't do it and asks Tsuna whether he told him anything. Tsuna asks who he's talking about, but before Reborn says anything, he tells him that it doesn't have anything to do with the Mafia, so he doesn't want the ring. But Reborn explains the ring means Tsuna is officially recognized as the Wongonga's successor, and when the Varia finds out the rings Squalo took were fake, they will come for the real ones in some 10 days or so. in which time they will train to beat them, but Tsuna still wants nothing to do with it. So he goes to Dino to give him back the rings, where he also finds Gokudera and Yamamoto, who also have one of the rings on them. Dino and Reborn then arrive to explain that they were chosen for the position of the 6 guardians meant to protect the Wongonga boss, in this case Tsuna, and that the other rings were also handed over to people deemed worthy of the position of guardian. Gokudera is overjoyed with this news, but Yamamoto says he doesn't want the ring since his baseball club doesn't allow accessories like that. Tsuna is relieved by that and tells Yamamoto that the ring is also dangerous because Squalo will come back for it, and after hearing that, Yamamoto changes his mind and says he will keep it, and he and Gokudera go off to prepare for Varia's arrival. Right then, the next guardian appears, and it's none other than Kyoko's brother, Ryohei. He says he heard the whole story about the rings, but he already forgot everything. He's just excited for the training he will receive from one of Reborn's acquaintances, Colonello, another arcobaleno that was introduced during the Mafia Land episode. Yes, there was an episode where they went to an amusement park just for the Mafia. And it is as funny as it sounds. Colonello checks out Ryohei real quick and comments how he is quite weak, and Reborn says he's probably the weakest of the Guardians, to which Colonello starts laughing and tells Ryohei that if he can keep up with his training, he will blow the others out of the water, and they rush to start the training. Then Dino says it's about time he went to take care of his own student, to which Tsuna asks him if he'll be training Gokudera or Yamamoto, but Dino says he's in charge of another, more troublesome one. And Reborn says Gokudera and Yamamoto will find their teachers on their own. Yamamoto goes to his father and asks him if he'll teach him kendo, and Gokudera goes to Shaman and asks him to train him like he did before, but Shaman refuses. And we find out the one Dino is in charge of is Hibari, who has no interest in the whole ring situation and just wants to fight Dino. Of course, Tsuna and Reborn are gonna do their own training to have Tsuna be able to handle the stress of the Hyper Dying Will mode, and to master a certain technique developed by the first Wongonga boss. We see some snippets of the trainings everyone is going to do in preparation for the big fight, and Haru bringing lunch to Tsuna and saying she saw Gokudera on her way there and he seemed to be injured. Reborn asks her if there was anyone with him, but she says he was alone, so Reborn concludes that Shaman must have refused to train him, and they go to him to make sure he'll be alright. And when they arrive there and see him all beat up and try to help him, they are stopped by Shaman. Tsuna asks him why he declined to teach Gokudera, to which Shaman says he has no interest in teaching someone who doesn't see it, when a stray stick of dynamite is about to blow Gokudera to bits. But he is saved by Tsuna's dad, who dug a hole for them to take cover in, and leaves after giving some words of wisdom to Gokudera, who then starts reminiscing about the time he beat some bullies as a kid with his new dynamite skills, but got injured in the process because of his recklessness, after which Shaman stopped teaching him. Because he doesn't see it, and it clicked for Gokudera that what Shaman was talking about is the value of his own life. As soon as he realizes that, Shaman agreed to teach him again, and now all the teacher-student combos are complete, and the training can progress as planned. But it will be cut short a bit because as soon as Squalo got back to Varia's boss, Xanxus notices the rings are fake and they all head back to Japan. Once there, 2 of their members, one of which is definitely not an arcobaleno, locate the guardian of one of their corresponding half-Wongonga rings with some sort of booger magic.
Brother,
And their target just happens to be Lambo, but Tsuna's dad caught wind of it and notified Tsuna to find Lambo while he gathers the rest of the guardians. And like that, the cat's out of the bag, and Tsuna found out his dad is part of the Mafia and also Bastian's master. They rush to find Lambo, who is with Futa and Ipin, and they get attacked by some goons, but Ryohei, Yamamoto and Gokudera arrive in time to save them. Then the big bads arrive, and just as Xanxus was about to turn everyone to ash, Iemitsu shows up with direct orders from the 9th boss that says Tsuna and Xanxus' guardians have to compete in battle for the ownership of the rings. And the group with more rings at the end wins the whole thing. And also these ladies from an organization called Cervello show up, saying they will set every match up and arrange everything, so it's another tournament arc. They say all the matches will take place at Namimori Middle School by night, so Tsuna and the gang will at least have the home turf advantage. After the encounter, Tsuna is scared shitless and doesn't want to train anymore, thinking it's pointless, so Reborn tells him to go to school instead. On the way there, he talks to Yamamoto and Gokudera, who are kinda excited about the whole thing and assure him that they will win, and that he's not alone in this, which helps him calm down. At school, Kyoko asks Suna what is going on, since she noticed her brother be interested in something else besides boxing, and she thinks he is somehow involved in it. He is about to spill the beans when Ryohei comes and tells her they are participating in a sumo tournament, and that was what he was preparing for. And she buys it. I mean, the girl is cute, but she's a few strawberries short of a fruit salad. Ryohei then drags Suna off to some heart-to-heart, where he tells him a story from his elementary school days about how some punk used Kyoko to lure him out and beat him up with his friends, after which he promised Kyoko not to get into fights anymore. But since he is still a man, so there will be times when he will have to fight, and when the time comes, he will win. Later that night they arrive at school for the first match in the ring's conflict, and the first combatants are the Guardians of the Sun Ring, Ryohei and Musuria. The gang even forms a circle to hype themselves up before the match, much to Gokudera's disdain. The match arena is a ring much like a boxing ring, which seems perfect for Ryohei, but Musuria is also a fighter, he just practices Muay Thai, which Reborn was expecting, and he explained that all the previous Guardians of the Sun Ring were fighters with strong fists or legs, since their duty is to reflect any damage the family would receive with their body back to the enemy, like the shining sun. The match begins and the gimmick of the battlefield is revealed. The ring is surrounded by strong reflectors simulating the sun, which blinds Ryohei, but Musuria is unaffected since he was wearing sunglasses from the start. And of course, giving Ryohei some sunglasses after the match started would result in his disqualification, so he has to fight blind, and the heat from the reflectors is causing him to dehydrate. Musuria has the advantage in these circumstances and is toying with Ryohei, and when Ryohei tries to counterattack, he hits Musuria's metal knee, which injures his left arm. Colonel then arrives telling Ryohei to show Musuria his shoe power, which motivates him to fight harder. Musuria dismisses this as just empty bravado, but Ryohei says to wait till he hits him with his right fist, which he saved for his finishing move. They start to tussle again, and Ryohei lands a punch on Musuria, but not a direct one. Still, he says he hit his mark, and the reflectors start breaking above them. He punches the air above him a couple more times till all the reflectors are out and he can open his eyes. Musuria freaks out thinking he broke the lights with the pressure from his fist, like some superhuman, but his teammate points out Ryohei's body is covered in salt from the evaporated sweat, so he just chunked some salt from his fist onto the lights to break them. You know, like a regular human. After realizing that, Musuria calmed down and continues the beatdown, but Ryohei does his finishing move, which gets countered by the iron knee again, because he didn't focus enough energy into his fist. Right then Kyoko shows up, and after she sees her brother lying on the ground, wounded, she starts crying, telling him he promised he wouldn't fight anymore. But that gave Ryohei the motivation to stand up and says he will win, so he tries once again to land a hit, and this time with his fully charged maximum cannon, he breaks the metal knee, destroying Musuria's only means of defense, and he won the fight. Kyoko is then dragged away by Colonello, and Musuria stands up saying he'll continue the fight, but he seems to be panicking somewhat. But everyone knows the fight is over, so one of the Varia members shoots Musuria, as it is their policy to get rid of all the weaklings in their ranks to keep their high Varia quality, which they earned by succeeding in some missions thought to be impossible for normal humans. And so the match ends in victory for Tsuna's family. But Kyoko comes back to ask Tsuna what's really going on, and he doesn't want to lie to her, so he's thinking about spilling the beans. But the boys got his back, and they corroborate on Ryohei's story that it is a sumo tournament. After that, the next match is decided to be between the Guardians of the Lightning Rings, Lambo and Leviathan. Of course, Tsuna is reluctant to let Lambo, a literal 5-year-old child, enter a deathmatch, and Reborn says he still has his training to complete and that they will finally start training with Hyper Dying Will mode, so his stress level is off the charts. He takes a bath to calm down and sees adult Lambo, and let me just say, I always found it funny how Tsuna calls a 15-year-old, a guy literally 1 year older than him, an adult. Drinking some milk in the kitchen, after his kid self used the 10-year bazooka in his sleep and he realized that adult Lambo can fight in tomorrow's battle. But adult Lambo tells him that if his younger self lost and was killed in the battle, he wouldn't be here now, so Tsuna asks him if that means he will win. But he's not sure about that, because he has no recollection of the ring battle ever taking place in his past, and suggests he might be a version of Lambo from a parallel world where there was no conflict for the rings. He only knows about it because the last time he came to the past, he found the ring and notes explaining the situation that were addressed for him, along with some shady looking horns, and before the time limit of the bazooka ran out, he told Tsuna to not let Kid Lambo use the bazooka during the fight tomorrow, and he left the horns behind because he thinks they are bad luck. The next day, Tsuna is off to train, but he can't concentrate on it because of the conversation he had with Adult Lambo last night and his worries about today's match, so Reborn calls it off for the day. At night, they go to the school rooftop, where a new arena is prepared. Several lightning rods connected to a metal wire net covering most of the roof that amplify any lightning that strikes them. And of course, there's a lightning storm during the match for the lightning ring. Lambo naturally thinks this is a game and wants to see the sparkly thing again, and Tsuna out of concern tells him that he doesn't have to fight if he doesn't want to. But Lambo, being his overconfident little brat self, still wants to go. Tsuna tells him about Adult Lambo not wanting him to use the 10-year bazooka and gives him the horns Adult Lambo left behind. The match starts and immediately another lightning hits the rods. Levi dodges the strike, but Lambo stood on the wire, so he gets electrocuted. But it barely phases him because the kid was electrocuted so often in his life that he developed a defense mechanism for it. His skin becomes so conductive to electricity that it only passes through the surface of his body on the way to the ground, so his internal organs are not damaged. Because of that, Reborn comments that Lambo is perfect for the role of the Lightning Guardian. One who not only serves as a lightning bomb to attack the enemy, but also as a lightning rod that absorbs potential damage to the family, which makes Levi extremely jealous, since his only goal in life is to be praised by Xanxus, and being the best Lightning Guardian is one of the things he thinks will bring him that praise. So he starts beating on this 5-year-old kid harder than I beat my meat before going to bed. This causes Lambo to use the 10-year bazooka to summon Adult Lambo. Tsuna apologizes for not stopping Kid Lambo from using the bazooka, but Adult Lambo says he expected this would happen, so he prepares to attack Levi, but is hit with his attack, which utilizes these 8 umbrella thingies that don't shoot an electric current at a target. It proves too much for Adult Lambo to handle, and he runs off crying like his younger self and using the 10-year bazooka again. And from the smoke emerges Lambo from 20 years in the future, and does my favorite cooler Daniel meme moments in anime. Levi hits him with his special move again, and lightning hits the electric circuit rods at the same time, further amplifying the power of electricity that hits Lambo, but it does nothing to him, since he mastered electricity at that point in time, and he just sends it all into the ground. He then sees the shady looking horns that Lambo from 10 years ago left behind, and recognizes them as his original horns he thought he had lost, which were actually a hint for Adult Lambo to summon the actually Adult Lambo with the bazooka, left to him by Tsuna's dad. He puts on the horns and charges his attack, heading straight for Levi, and this time he extends the electricity from the horns, giving him more range and power, which catches Levi off guard and he is about to be hit by the attack, which will win Lambo the fight. But the timing of the 10-year bazooka transformation wears off and he returns to being a kid again, and he gets hit by all the lightning his future self absorbed and is rendered unconscious. Levi attacks him in anger, claiming he's the one best suited for the role of the Lightning Guardian after all and is about to kill him, but at the last minute, Tsuna steps in and saves Lambo, proclaiming he will never fight for the rings and to be the next boss, but to keep his friends safe, which results in his disqualification and taking off the Ring of the Sky, which was given to Xanxus, who arrived at the end of the fight. He seemed amused at Tsuna's proclamation and tells him he's similar to the 9th boss, which may be why he chose him as a successor. He says that with the Sky Ring in his possession, he can end them right then and there with Wangola's authority, but that would be boring, so he will give them a chance in the rest of the ring battles, and if they somehow win, Tsuna will become the boss, but if they lose, he will destroy everything they cherish. He also implies he did something to the 9th boss, which angers Reborn and Iemitsu, who question him about it. But he just says that it's Iemitsu's job to find out as the external advisor. So with 1 ring in possession of Tsuna and 2 with Xanxus, Varia is currently in the lead and the next battle announced is between the Guardians of the Storm Ring, Gokudera and Belphegor. But Gokudera still hasn't finished his new technique, so he has until the next day to figure it out. Tsuna also starts the next phase of his training. Lambo is taken to the hospital and Iemitsu goes to Italy to find out what happened to the 9th boss, Before the match, Shaman tells Gokudera that Belphegor is a genius in both smarts and combat ability, also a royalty apparently, and if he doesn't complete his technique by the time of the match, he won't let him fight because he would just die. As the time of the match approaches, everyone is gathering at school for it, but Gokudera is nowhere to be seen. They move indoors to the arena for the fight, and the cervellos say that if Gokudera is not there by 11, he will be disqualified. The time is fast approaching, and just as the clock strikes 11, Gokudera blasted with his dynamite, and he comes in apologizing for his tardiness to Tsuna. And of course he is forgiven, because he showed up in the sickest fit in the show. My boy got that drip. Anyway, the rules for the match are that the entire third floor of the school is the arena. But the catch is that there are several so-called hurricane turbines placed throughout the floor, which can generate powerful gusts of wind and expel them in 4 directions in certain time intervals. Also, if the fight is not over in 15 minutes, the turbines will sequentially explode, destroying the entire floor. So yeah, no pressure. The gang as always form a circle to hype themselves up, much to Gokudera's annoyance, but he quickly changed his tune once Tsuna asked him to, and they even include Lambo by holding his tail. Before the match starts, the spectators are careened over into a separate area which is blocked by lasers, so no more interferences may occur, and Bell gives Gokudera a little tap on the shoulders telling him not to be so tense. Then the match starts and Gokudera takes the initiative by throwing a bomb at Bell to see how he would react. He is unfazed by that and starts his counterattack by throwing a bunch of knives at Gokudera, which he dodges and throws a bunch more dynamite at Bell, who just moves a bit back, and the turbines start generating wind which blows out all the bombs and makes it impossible to land a hit on him. But at least he also can't hit Gokudera under these conditions as well. Right?
Wrong!
Well, you would think so, but all of his attacks go right on the mark and Gokudera can't do anything but dodge, which forces him to retreat and think of a plan. But the attacks just keep coming, even though Bell should not be able to see him. Gokudera panics for a bit, but after Bell insults Tsuna, he steals his resolve and thinks about how the attack works. He remembers the beginning of the match when Bell patted him on the shoulder and he realized it. Bell sends another attack at him, but he hit a human model that Gokudera wrapped wire around, the same wire that Bell put on him before the match began, which he used to guide the knives with. Right then, the turbines start again and Bell notes he still can't hit him with all this wind, so him figuring out his trick is useless, which is when Gokudera demonstrates his new technique he developed for the match. He throws another bunch of dynamite at Bell, and right before they hit the wind, they start propelling themselves like a rocket and change direction mid-air twice, so they go straight for Bell without hitting the wind. He gets injured, but is still standing, and witnessing his royal blood being spilled makes him go into his Prince the Reaper mode, which makes him fight more recklessly but not any less calculating. He chases Gokudera around, throwing more knives at him and using the wires offensively as well, cutting him with them even when the knives miss. Their showdown culminates in the library, where Bell sets a trap for Gokudera, cornering him between the bookshelves by surrounding him on all sides with wires. But Gokudera pulls an Uno reverse card on him by luring him into a trap as well. He set up some explosives under the bookshelves, which he set off by igniting a trail of gunpowder, and when the bookshelves collapse, the wires turn limp and ineffective, but they can still be used as guidelines for Gokudera's rocket bombs, leading them straight to Bell, who finally gets blown up and is down for the count. But the fight is not over, because Gokudera has to put the two halves of the ring together to win, and he better do it fast, because the bombs in the turbines are about to go off. He wobbles off to Bell's unconscious ass, because he took a lot of damage in the fight, and as he was hunched over him, Bell grabs his chain and starts wrestling him for the ring. Not because he's desperate to keep his life like Luzuria, but because his royal doucheness can't stand losing to a peasant. On top of that, while they were wrestling, the bombs start going off, and very soon the explosions will reach them, so Shaman tells Gokudera to forget the ring and get out of there. But Gokudera refuses, since they would be in a losing position if they lost this round, which prompts Tsuna to tell him that that's not what they are fighting for. Rather, they fight to get back to the peaceful days, when they could enjoy watching fireworks and having fun together, which they can't do if he is not there. Right then, the explosions reach the library, and the feeds of the cameras is cut so the spectators can't see what happened, but they see someone emerging from the smoke, who turns out to be Gokudera, without the ring. My boy got done dirty again. He apologizes to Tsuna for losing, saying he wanted to see the fireworks again. And as always, the next match is announced and it's between the Rain Guardians, Yamamoto and Squall. The rematch we've been waiting for since the start of the arc. Gokudera tells Yamamoto to better win this one, and Yamamoto reassures him that he's got this. As if that wasn't enough excitement for a day, right then Hibari decides to show up being back from his cross-country training road trip with Dino. Beating every Varia goon he sees, finally coming to the top floor being all like "Get off my lawn," and threatening everyone to bite them to death for wrecking his school. He continues to trash talk everyone, clown on Levi, and wants to just bust everyone's skull in, so Yamamoto tries to calm him down, which he took really well, by just attacking Yamamoto, who dodges it with a move he learned in his training, which Squall notices, immediately congratulating him for finally having learned a style, but he still has no chance of winning. Reborn manages to finally calm Hibari down, telling him he might be able to fight Mukuro again if he just waits patiently, which hits a nerve, but it works, so Hibari just tells Yamamoto to not lose before it's his turn to fight. A bit later, Dino shows up to tell Yamamoto a bit about Squall, explaining that he was supposed to be the Varia boss at one point in time, and it's a mystery to him why he would follow Xanxus, and that he has defeated countless swordsmen and perfected his style when he defeated Varia's previous boss, who held the title of Blade Emperor, and that if he wanted to defeat him, he would have to transcend any sword style. The next day, Yamamoto is still thinking about what Dino said to him when he is visited by Tsuna and Reborn, who are coming back from their training to check on him. His father also arrives to give him a special sword for today's match, the Shigure Kintoki. It's a seemingly ordinary bamboo sword, but it's made of steel, and if used with the Shigure Soen style he taught to Yamamoto, it transforms into a katana, and reverts back if used with any other style, to which Tsuna comments that Yamamoto won't be able to use it in the match, because he is supposed to transcend his style in order to defeat his opponent, and Yamamoto's dad snaps at them saying that's a bunch of boom, because the Shigure Soen style is perfect and second to none. So Yamamoto decides to go with it and is ready to face Squall with renewed determination. The location of the match is the school's south building, which has been completely sealed off, because the interior was remodeled to accommodate the field for the match, with water flowing from the top of the building and gradually filling it up. Also, when the water reaches a certain level, a ferocious sea animal will be released into it, so you know, no pressure. The match starts and Squall immediately goes on the offensive, pushing Yamamoto back, but he manages to hold his own by using Shigure Soen style's defensive forms and getting a good hit in with one of the offensive ones. But Squall managed to dodge it in time and asked Yamamoto why he used the blunt side of his sword, and he answered that his goal is to beat Squall, not kill him. Of course, he gets called naive for it, and Squall tells him he won't land another hit on him since he already crushed the Shigure Soen style and knows all about its 8 forms, because he already defeated the master of the style after he used the 8th form Autumn Rain. And Yamamoto is surprised after hearing that, since the 8th form he learned was called Pouring Rain. At that moment, he understood the situation and is confronting Squall again, saying that the Shigure Soen style he learned from his dad is perfect and unbeatable. And they clash and Yamamoto uses Pouring Rain to finally land a hit on Squall. But since he used the blunt side of the blade again, Squall is still able to fight and asks him if he can use a style other than Shigure Soen style, and Yamamoto tells him it was still the Shigure Soen style and the other forms are all that Squall knows, but Pouring Rain was created by his father. Squall is assured of his victory because of that, since he now saw every form and can counter them. But Yamamoto takes an unfamiliar stance and prepares to use the 9th form, but his sword turns back to a bamboo sword. It is because he understood why his father gave him the Shigure Kintoki. It's to see if he is worthy to inherit the Shigure Soen style by developing a form of his own and making the blade transform. Squall charges at him and Yamamoto pulls up a pillar of water with his blade and backs away with Squall following him, but Yamamoto appears behind him and Squall reverses his grip and stabs him. But it was just a reflection in the water pillar, and the real Yamamoto then jumps at him, hits him in the back of the head and takes the ring, putting the two halves together and wins the match. But the water level has reached the required height, so a shark is released in the field. Yamamoto tries to carry Squall out, but the shark collapses the pillar that supported the platform they were standing on, making it fall down to the water level, and it made Yamamoto lose his footing, and they were about to become shark food. But Squall tells Yamamoto to leave him behind to not taint his honor as a swordsman, and he kicks him away with the last of his strength, telling him he has skills as a swordsman, he just needs to get rid of his softness, and is then swallowed whole by the shark. This leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth, except the Varia, and Xanxus laughs at Squall for losing, saying he finally severed one link to his past. With the match concluded, the next match is announced. It is between the Guardians of the Mist Ring, which freaks Tsuna out, because he still doesn't know who his Mist Guardian is. Next day at training, Reborn and Colonello discuss their next opponent, suspecting he might be an arcobaleno like themselves, and Colonello says if it's who they think it is, Tsuna's guy doesn't stand a chance, to which Reborn retorts that he doesn't even know who their guy is, so how can he be so sure? So Tsuna asks him to finally tell them who the Mist Guardian is, but he just dismisses it and sends Tsuna to buy juice for everyone. When he gets to the shop, he sees two Kokyo students there that turn out to be Ken and Chikusa, Mukuro's lackeys, and he faints from fear when Ken gets all up in his face. The future boss of Wongola, everyone. Reborn then arrives to greet them, saying he thought seeing them would make Tsuna happy, since he was worried about them after the Kokyo arc incident. So they leave and tell Reborn that Tsuna's Mist Guardian is too good for him. Gee, I wonder who it could be. While all this is happening, Iemitsu is in Italy trying to get to the 9th Wongola boss and rescue him, along with his team from Chedef, consisting of Long Mirch, a failed arcobaleno, turmeric, and oregano. And I gotta say, I agree with owner Zeph on this one.
Needs a lot more oregano.
Iemitsu's subordinates serve as distractions while he gets to the boss, but once he gets to him, the 9 pulls a gun on him and shoots. Back in Japan, Basim carried the unconscious Tsuna to the location of the next match, which was the school's gymnasium. Everyone was already there, as well as the Varia, but Tsuna's Mist Guardian still hasn't arrived, which made everyone worried. But just as they thought no one would show up, Ken and Chikusa entered the building, which alarmed Gokudera and Yamamoto, who were preparing to fight them, but Reborn told them they are here to escort the Mist Guardian, and they come to the conclusion that it must be Mukuro. But the Mist Guardian reveals themselves, and it turns out to be a girl with an eye patch over her right eye, calling herself Chrome Dokuro. Of course Gokudera is against her being a guardian, saying she must be possessed by Mukuro. She even has the same weapon as him, and is hiding her eye. But Tsuna doesn't sense Mukuro in her, and allows her to be the guardian of the Mist Ring, for which she gives him a kiss as thanks, which makes Gokudera extremely jealous. The battle is about to start, and the Cervello explained that the entire gymnasium is the battlefield, and the contestants are free to use anything in it as they like, and there are no special gimmicks involved this time. Which comes as a surprise to everyone, but Reborn explains nothing extra is required for a battle of the Mist Guardians, because it's their job to act as a mist protecting the family by hiding the truth with illusions. The battle begins and Chrome goes on the attack, with an illusion technique like the one Mukuro used, but Mammon sees through it and captures Chrome, with a bunch of tentacles coming out of his face. Boy, this got weird fast. But it turns out what he caught was a bunch of basketballs, and Chrome is just behind him. He is glad that his opponent has some skills, so he can use his full power. He removes some chains from something under his cloak, and reveals a glowing pacifier, and Reborns and Colonellos also start glowing, so their suspicion of him being an arcobaleno are confirmed.
Mild shock.
They reveal he is the arcobaleno Viper, who is also an illusionist and has psychic powers on top of that. But they are confused as to why their pacifiers didn't detect him until now, to which Reborn says it must be because the chain sealed its powers somehow, and Viper confirms it, saying it's the byproduct of some research he did, and unlike them, he never stopped trying to undo their curse. Man, that's a lot of bombshells thrown all at once. The fight continues, and Chrome keeps using techniques that are just like Mukuro's, so Gokudera is still convinced she is possessed, but Tsuna is sure she is the one in control of her actions, even though he feels Mukuro every now and then somewhere. Viper eventually gains the upper hand when he counters Chrome's illusion with his own, and he destroys her weapon, which causes her to collapse and her stomach starts to cave in and she is calling for Mukuro. We see a flashback of her getting in an accident and her stepfather coming to the hospital complaining how he didn't close the deal at work because of it, and her mother telling him she jumped in front of a truck to save a cat and her organs got destroyed. The father says they told him she could be saved if she gets a transplant from a blood relative, but her mother is not willing to do it for her, saying she was always a weird child that couldn't get along with anyone. The father goes back to work saying to the mother she can do as she likes. Chrome hears everything and realizes she is about to die. But Mukuro talks to her and she hears him, which surprises him. So he recreates her organs with his illusion so she could live.
I have several questions.
But let's just put this one under anime logic and move on. As Chrome was lying there, we hear Mukuro tell her she did a good job and rest for a bit. Mist begins to envelop her body and Tsuna starts freaking out, saying Mukuro is coming. And he emerges from the mist enveloping Chrome with his trademark laugh, landing a surprise attack on Viper. But he is unfazed and comments that he heard of Mukuro and that he tried to escape from the Vindice prison again, but he failed, claiming he is just an illusion created by Chrome and he won't lose to an illusion. He envelops him in ice and is about to smash him to bits, but Mukuro counters his illusion, actually hurting Viper, so he unleashes his full power and they begin clashing illusions again, which makes everyone's head hurt because they were exposed to too much of them in a short time, and Tsuna seemingly gets the worst of it. But he also gets a vision of Mukuro's escape attempt and how he stayed behind for the Vindice to capture him so Ken and Chikusa could escape, and the new cell he was thrown in for it, and also how Iemitsu recruited him in exchange for harboring Ken and Chikusa. Back in the fight, Viper traps Mukuro in a powerful technique, but Mukuro just bursts out of it with the two halves of the ring. He is about to combine them, but Viper still has some juice left. However, Mukuro reminds him that if an illusionist falls for another illusionist technique, it's over for him, and he explodes the baby from the inside.
Pop D, baby. Strong, dude.
He completes the ring and is declared the victor. Tsuna says he didn't have to go so far as to kill Viper, and Mukuro reprimands him for his naivety, but tells him not to worry, since he saved enough strength to escape. Zangzus tells Gonga Mosca, his Cloud Guardian, that after the ring battle is over, he should find Viper and eliminate him. Mukuro comments how Zangzus is the Mafia's darkness personified, and that even he finds his plan scary, but he won't reveal it or interfere in it since he is also not a good person. But he warns him not to underestimate Tsuna too much. And with most of his power spent, Mukuro pieces out, telling Tsuna to look after Chrome, but he doesn't even hold her to stop her fall. I thought Mafia bosses are supposed to be gentlemen. Ken and Chikusa also bail, leaving Chrome there, saying they have no intention to coddle her since she is not Mukuro. So with that, both sides have 3 rings in their possession, and Reborn asks Zangzus if he will keep his promise to give up the claim to being the successor if Hibari wins the next round. And he immediately says he will respect the Vongola tradition and admit defeat if that happens. Everyone is glad to hear that, since they have faith in Hibari's abilities. But Reborn knows Zangzus wouldn't say that if he wasn't absolutely sure Gonga Mosca would win the match. Next day, Tsuna wakes up from a nightmare where he saw Hibari losing his match, so he went to Dino's hospital to ask him if Hibari is ready for the fight. He sees Chrome exiting the hospital and asks her about Mukuro, to which she says he is sleeping at the moment since he is exhausted from his fight the other day. And she goes to meet up with Ken and Chikusa. Inside the hospital, Tsuna overhears Dino and his right-hand man Romario having a serious conversation, but is glad when Dino greets him as his usual cheerful self, and he immediately knew Tsuna was there to ask him about Hibari, and shows him Gokudera, Yamamoto and Ryohei sleeping in the next room, telling him they came to ask the same thing, and fell asleep after they have been reassured that Hibari is strong and ready to fight, which also makes Tsuna sleepy after hearing it. But Reborn comes to tell him he still has to finish his training, so he will be ready for the worst case scenario. Meanwhile, the members of CHEDEF are searching for Iemitsu in the Vongola base when they come across a weapons research room that has some nasty stuff the Mafia bought from the Italian military after World War II, and they send the thing they were developing to the Varia, which happens to be none other than Gonga Mosca. Before the match, Gokudera is trying to hype everyone up in place of Tsuna, but when Hibari arrives, he's his usual
Get off my lawn
self, which pisses him and Ryohei off, and they all head to the arena located on the sports field. And if you thought the ones before were elaborate, boy, you've seen nothing yet. This one has a fence with barbed wires around the field, and at any corner there are machine guns set to fire anything that comes into range. Oh, and there's also landmines spread across the field as well. Back at Vongola HQ, the CHEDEF members discuss the Gonga Mosca and how it's an overkill to use it against people, when they get jumped by one busting through the wall and shrugging off all their attacks as if they were nothing. And just as it was about to finish them off, it shuts down thanks to Morietti, Iemitsu spies at HQ, who flips the emergency switch. They shudder to think what the Varia would do with a weapon like that, but Moriarty says this is just a prototype. The one sent to the Varia is much more advanced and has no shutdown switch, so once it has a target in sight, it won't stop. And back in Amimori, the match for the Cloud Ring is about to start. And it's over.
Wow, that was so anticlimactic.
Yeah, Hibari one-shots the murder machine, tosses the ring to the Cervello like a hot potato throwing champ, and challenges Xanxus to a fight. However, Xanxus doesn't look at all concerned. He jumps in the ring saying it's to retrieve Gonga Mosca since they lost, but Hibari attacks him before he could do it. Xanxus tells the Cervello to observe everything, especially how he is not attacking. Right then, Gonga Mosca shoots Hibari in the leg and is indiscriminately firing its weapons across the home field. Xanxus explains he was trying to retrieve Mosca to prevent that, but Tsuna's Cloud Guardian prevented him, so now there's no stopping it. Back in Italy, Moretti brings everyone to Iemitsu, who is wounded and has the Vongola 9 boss's body double that shot him with him, which makes everyone wonder where the real boss is, and Iemitsu says he found his personal jet flight schedule, and it was in Japan at the moment. Which makes sense if he wanted to control the ring conflict and make Xanxus the successor, but Iemitsu still has some questions for him, to which the body double says it's too late to ask them now. He's asked to explain, and he tells them that the reason the Gonga Mosca was thrown away by the military was because it's an inhumane weapon that feeds on the life of a person as its fuel, specifically a person with the energy of the dying will flame. Iemitsu immediately understood what that meant and yells that they must immediately stop the Cloud Ring match, where Mosca is currently going wild and is about to fire on Chrome, Ken and Chikusa, who are caught between it and the machine guns. But just in the nick of time, Tsuna arrives and shields them with his dying will flames and starts wrecking Gonga Mosca. And he's going to town on it. The dude is taking no prisoners. So much so that Mosca starts to only attack him, but he manages to cut it open and shut it down for good. And then the 9th boss, who was Mosca's fuel source, falls out from inside of it. Xanxus starts accusing Tsuna for hurting the 9th, and Tsuna himself is feeling guilty for it, but the 9th regains consciousness and tells him it's not Tsuna's fault, and it all happened because of his weakness because he woke Xanxus from his 8-year slumber, where he was put after the Cradle incident. The largest coup d'etat in Vongola history, spearheaded by Xanxus himself. A fact known only by the Vongola higher-ups and the elites that fought in that battle. The 9th says he heard a lot about Tsuna from Reborn, and knows he's someone with a heart ill-suited to be a mafia boss, since he's kind and doesn't like fighting, but that's exactly why he chose him as the next boss. Which came as a surprise to Tsuna, since the whole point of the ring conflict is because he chose Xanxus as his successor. The 9th extends his finger to Tsuna's forehead and lights a dying will flame at the tip of it, which gives Tsuna a nostalgic feeling, and he remembers meeting the 9th when he was a small child. But the 9th loses his strength and the flame dies out. The 9th loses consciousness and Xanxus declares he will take vengeance on Tsuna, who has attacked the 9th boss and tarnished the noble Vongola spirit, saying the ring conflict doesn't matter anymore, which was his goal from the start, since those that knew of the Cradle incident wouldn't side with him if he became boss, but if he defeated Tsuna to avenge his father, he would gain their support or be able to eliminate those who still oppose him. The Cervello, however, still want to continue the ring battle to determine who is truly the rightful successor, but Reborn is having none of that, since he's past the level of pissed off, but he says he'll let his battle-hating student decide what he wants to do, to which Tsuna declares to Xanxus he won't let him succeed the 9th, and the battle to determine the next Vongola boss, dubbed the Sky Ring Battle, is announced, which requires all the Guardians to assemble at the school the next day. Xanxus gives Tsuna half of the Sky Ring and pieces out in a fiery ball.
You may not like it, Minister, but you can't deny your style.
Dino then arrives to take care of the 9th and the injured, since Iemitsu contacted him, and everyone is focused on Tsuna, with even Hibari being uncharacteristically calm, saying he can't make a move if this situation will bring out Tsuna's strength. They go home to recharge for tomorrow's battle, and the next morning Reborn gives Tsuna his usual rude awakening. They do some usual breakfast shenanigans, and he sends him off to school after a whole week of skipping it. He has a conversation with Kyoko there, giving her some of that mafia boss riz, and he receives a protective charm from her since they have been getting injured at the sumo wrestling tournament, which she still believes is going on. She also has some for the others, saying everyone made them together, which is a cue to Haru, Bianchi, Ipin and Futa to arrive, being all incognito wearing Namimori uniforms so that they could wish them luck in the next fight. And we pan to Reborn watching, saying to Tsuna to not forget why he is fighting, to come back to those peaceful days. Before the match starts, all the surviving Guardians are assembled, including the badly injured ones like Lambo and Musuria, and are asked for their rings back. They are reluctant to hand them over after what they went through to get them, but are told if they are the true Guardians, they will get them back. They are then escorted to their respective fields of battle, and this time there is a pole in the middle of it, with the ring placed on top of it, and they have to retrieve it, if they are able. You see, before the match starts, they are giving bracelets with a small screen on it, so they can monitor different arenas, and the bracelets are also loaded with poison called Death Heater, which they are injected with at the start of the match, and the poison paralyzes them and causes a burning pain sensation that gets worse for 30 minutes before they die, and if they want to get the antidote, they have to insert the appropriate ring in the designated spot on the bracelet, and the antidote will be injected. And also, in addition to completing the Sky Vongola ring, the other condition to win the battle is to gather all the Guardian rings and put them on the chain designated to hold them. Tsuna takes the chain and says to hurry up and start so he can help his friends, and the Cervello explain that when the match starts, all outside interference is prohibited, which includes special bullets. Zangzu surprises Tsuna and sucker punches him, saying he did say he wanted to hurry and start, and asks if he should have waited for Reborn to hit him with the dying wheel bullet. But Reborn already did it, and Tsuna gets up and is ready to rumble. Reborn advises him to concentrate on Zangzus, since he is not someone he can defeat if he is distracted with his guardians, and Tsuna agrees, and says he will take care of him first. The match begins and Tsuna takes the offensive, but Zangzus overwhelms him and he busts out his special weapon, the Flames of Wrath, which is strong enough to turn reinforced concrete to ashes. As Reborn explains it, it's a special kind of dying wheel flames that only one other person except Xangzus was able to use, the second Vongola boss, and they got their name because he only used them when he was consumed by rage. Xangzus taunts Tsuna by asking him if he knows why the first boss escaped to Japan, and says it's because he was afraid of the second and his flames, and Tsuna asks him if he wants to test that theory and dives straight towards Xangzus. They clash their flames against each other and Tsuna comes out on top and sets Xangzus flying. True, Xangzus' flames have a higher destructive power, but Tsuna broke through them by focusing his flames, showcasing his improved control of them from his training. This forces Xangzus to pull out his other weapon, a pair of guns, like a real fucking mafioso. And not just any old pistols, but ones that absorb his dying will flame into special bullets and release them in a more concentrated beam. The same type of gun was used by the 7th Vongola boss, who had by far the weakest flame, but with his gun he boasted a great destructive power despite that. So Xangzus having those guns is a fearsome combination. Dude can even fly with them like Tsuna with his gloves. While fighting in the air, Xangzus lines up a shot at Tsuna, which he could avoid, but instead he takes it head on to protect the gymnasium behind him where Chrome was. Xangzus remembers Tsuna saying he won't let any of his subordinates die, and asks him what he gained by doing that, and says he doesn't care if any of the Varia die, all while watching them beg him to save them on the monitor, before taking flight once more and firing at the poles where the storm and lightning rings are, which land right before Bell and Levi. Of course Tsuna wants to go help his friends, but Xangzus ain't gonna let that slide. Someone does come to Gokudera's rescue, flinging the ring up to him, and it's none other than Hibari?
What? What the fuck?
Yeah, he just casually busted down the pole while being injected with poison that can take down an elephant, because he's just too stubborn. Man, this is such a because it's Erza moment, and honestly, I live for those type of moments in my shonen anime. He starts duking it out with Bell while Levi looks for Lambo to settle the beef he has with him. Heh, get it? Beef? Because Lambo is a cow. Anyway, Gokudera is the one to come to his rescue now that he is free from the poison's influence, and he takes down Levi by taunting him to use his umbrellas, which he then easily destroys with his rocket bombs, along with Levi. He gives Lambo the antidote and goes off to help the other guardians so Tsuna can fight without worrying about them. Same with Bell, who escapes from Hibari after he learned his knife and wire trick. Tsuna continues to fight with Xiangzus and is getting overwhelmed by Xiangzus' speed and firepower. He takes a direct hit, but is saved by his vest that was made of fibers resistant to dying will flames, but it got destroyed, so he can't afford to take another such hit. So he finally decides to bust out the technique he was perfecting for the last week, the Dying Will 0-point breakthrough. Yeah, try saying that 5 times fast. He starts releasing flames and they begin to flicker in intervals. This causes Xiangzus to panic a bit, and he does everything he can to stop Tsuna from using the technique, and after a bit of chasing around, he hits Tsuna with another powerful blow. After the dust settles, Tsuna is lying on the floor with his Dying Will flame extinguished and his gloves back to normal. Xiangzus starts boasting over his victory, and in typical anime fashion, the hero gets up with his flame relit. Turns out the technique he was using is one that lets him enter the negative Dying Will state, which is the inverse of the regular Dying Will, so he could absorb Xiangzus' flame, and the flickering of his flame was him going from positive to zero state to figure out the timing to go negative. But he couldn't absorb all the flames and he took some damage, so things are still not looking good, and Xiangzus is unimpressed by this feat and tells Tsuna that that wasn't the real Dying Will 0-point breakthrough, leaving Reborn confused as to why he even knows about the technique. He gets ready to blast Tsuna again, to which Tsuna says not to miss, and he will do the technique properly next time, as he takes the stance to use it, but adjusting it slightly from before, calling it his revised version. But Xiangzus won't just stand there and let him do it. He ragdolls Tsuna around for a bit and hits him with consecutive blasts, but Tsuna won't go down and he reminds Xiangzus of the 9th boss, so he decides to end him with one big attack. However, Tsuna is still standing, and somehow he seems to have powered up. He attacks Xiangzus and is able to keep up with his speed and lands a few good hits, so Xiangzus fires another big blast at him and Tsuna does his revised 0-point breakthrough again, which absorbs Xiangzus' attack and turns his flames into Tsuna's own, explaining his power up from before, and he sends Xiangzus flying with another punch. He still manages to stand up and is consumed by rage, saying he can't be defeated by the fake Dying Will 0-point breakthrough, and his rage causes his flames to surge and his scars to widen, covering most of his body. Meanwhile, Hibari saves Yamamoto, and Gokudera helps Ryohei and Musuria, leaving Rambo with Ryohei and taking their rings before meeting with Yamamoto, who has his and Hibari's ring, and they are off to help Chrome. And also, Dino arrives with none other than Squalo in tow, being all banged up and in a wheelchair from the injuries he sustained from the shark, but was saved by the man Dino planted in the arena to save Yamamoto if the need arrived. He brought Squalo there to the Skyring battle in hopes he will talk about what happened to Xiangzus in the past and why he is so willing to follow him. At the same time, Gokudera and Yamamoto go in the gymnasium to help Chrome, but Belle and Mammon are holding her hostage and demand they hand over the rings in exchange for her life. Yamamoto tells them they have all the remaining rings with them and they will first trade 2 of them for them to give Chrome the antidote, and the rest for Chrome's release. Belle agrees but tells Yamamoto to throw the ring to them so they are not in range of his sword. He tosses the rings to them and they simultaneously give Chrome the antidote, and Yamamoto pretends to sleep so he could lower his sword and kick it with his foot at them to catch them off guard. But they were just illusion created by Mammon as a precaution, and now they are trapped in an even stronger one which forces them to hand over the rings. But they are saved by Ryohei, who punched a wall from the outside and blasted the whole gymnasium away. Man, from the weakest member to a building buster in a single training session with Colonel. Pretty impressive. But Belle and Mammon were okay even after that, and they managed to escape with the rings. Outside, the battle between Tsuna and Xiangzus is nearing the end. Tsuna attacks Xiangzus to finish him off, but he withstands his attack and fires off his own, which was too powerful for Tsuna to absorb. And they clash again, interlocking their hands and focusing their flames in them, making their fists glow, and eventually the whole school is engulfed in a bright light, and when it settles, the one left standing in the middle of the field is Xiangzus. But his hands are encased in ice. Tsuna managed to seal his flames in ice by using the original Dying Will 0-point breakthrough the first Vongola boss developed, stopping him from igniting flames from his hands. But Xiangzus doesn't admit defeat, and Tsuna warns him if he doesn't stop, he will end up with worse scars than what the 9th boss gave him when he trapped him in the same ice before. He still goes after Tsuna, but is incapacitated, and Tsuna encases his whole body in ice with the 0-point breakthrough first edition and takes his ring. After hearing Tsuna's remark about Xiangzus being frozen by the night and seeing him in that ice, Reborn figured out this must be what happened to him in the cradle incident and why he slept for the last 80 years until now. Squall confirms this and tells them about the coup the Varia attempted 80 years ago, but omits the last conversation before the night and Xiangzus, which he overheard while being incapacitated before Xiangzus was frozen. But the match is still not over, since Tsuna hasn't gathered all the rings. However, he is exhausted from his battle and is barely able to move, which is the perfect opportunity for Musuria and Levi to jump him, like they're in Jujutsu Kaisen. But Tsuna recognizes them as just illusions created by Mammon, who says he will save Xiangzus with the power of the Wongonga rings. He explains the rings are split and given to the successor because they themselves hold a great power, which will be granted to their holder with the blood of Wongonga during the succession ceremony. And as he said it, the rings start to emit dying will flames in the colors of the rainbow that melt the ice Xiangzus was encased in. Tsuna's guardians arrive at the scene just as Mammon and Belg were placing the rings on Xiangzus' chain and the sky ring on his finger, completing the requirements for match victory, and Xiangzus was basking in the power the rings were granting him, but the power turned on him and hurt him. Tsuna realizes the ring rejected Xiangzus and figures out what the Knight was trying to convey to him that time he was freed from Gonga Mosca, and Xiangzus confirms his suspicion, saying he is not the biological son of the Knight and therefore he cannot legitimately be the next Wongonga boss. He and Squall then have a heart-to-heart about how Squall understands his feelings of rage and betrayal since he overheard his conversation with the Knight 80 years ago, where Xiangzus confronted the Knight about not telling him the truth. Tsuna also tells Xiangzus the Knight didn't kill him at the time because he considered him his real son, but Xiangzus doesn't care about any of that, he just wants to be the boss, and if he can't be one legitimately, he will just eliminate everyone in his way. He orders Bell and Mammon to kill everyone, but Tsuna's guardians step in to stop them, saying they have no chance since they are outnumbered. But they reveal that a force of 50 elite Varia members are on their way to eliminate anyone connected to the ring conflict and its participants. Hearing that, Colonel and the other spectators request to be released from the spectators area to join Tsuna's side, and the Cervello approve and disqualify Varia from the match, but they tampered with the spectator area and the security measures cannot be disabled, leaving Tsuna and friends to fend for themselves. Chrome then gets a message from Mukuro telling her someone is coming, when a group of Varia members arrive, but they are here to report that their home force was annihilated by a single man, who is on the way there and he arrives to finish them off, but not in a good way. And it's revealed it's none other than Lancia from the Kokyo arc, who is actually considered the strongest man in northern Italy. Tsuna is pleasantly surprised to see him, and Lancia tells him he is not here to help him, but to thank him. He and Tsuna's guardians surround Xiangzus and his goons, they surrender, and Tsuna is declared the victor of the Sky Ring battle. Squall tells Dino they are now part of their world, and that they will regret it in time, wishing they had rather died here. Foreshadowing maybe? I guess we'll see. Tsuna, after realizing it's over, grabs the charm Kyoko gave him and passes out from exhaustion with a smile on his face. He wakes up the next day and goes to a party everyone organized to celebrate Lambo's discharge from the hospital and Tsuna's victory in the sumo contest. They all have a grand old time, especially Gokudera, who is excited that Tsuna is the new boss, but Dino informs him that the Knight is recovering from his wound and is going to be alright, so Tsuna is not gonna be boss just yet, much to Tsuna's relief. Lancia and Basim try to sneak out from the party to go back to Italy, but Tsuna catches up to them to say goodbye. Reborn asks Lancia if it's true that Mukuro sent him here, but he says he hasn't heard from Mukuro since he was captured, but he got a weird premonition the day before the Sky battle. He gives Tsuna a gift before leaving, the ring his boss gave him, and Basim gives Tsuna the Dying Will pills and they continue on their way. And so ends the Varia and ring conflict arc of Katekyo Hitman Reborn. An arc full of action, danger and excitement, which plants the seeds for future challenges Tsuna will have to face. But that will have to wait until the next part. Right now Tsuna has some homework to do. And I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you next time. Bye!